My name's Emily and I'm a newly full-time artist. I thought I would take you around my studio to show you how I set it up on a budget. So what you're looking at here is actually the corner of my bedroom. I nailed up this blanket to the wall to protect the surfaces, and then I have a really old torn sheet on the ground to protect the carpet. For the most part, I'm using this really trusty $12 easel from Facebook Marketplace. I see them on Facebook Marketplace, Nextdoor, all the time, really cheap, but I know that they sell them new at Target, Michael's, Walmart for anywhere from like 15 to 40 bucks. So this I can also take with me. Sometimes I do plein air painting as well, which is an outside setup. I like things that I can fold into small little bags that I can take with me. Everything that I use regularly that I'm constantly reaching for is right by my side here. I think that makeup organizers are a great organizational tool for arts and crafts. So I keep my brushes, and I keep most of the paints that I use most frequently here. When it comes to brushes and just starting out, don't think that you have to buy something really fancy to get started. I would say 90%, 99% of my paintings are done with this brush here. Every artist has their own preference. As somebody who is trying to work on the foundations, one of my major goals is to limit myself in color, supply, size, to really focus on the basics. So you'll see most of my work is done with 1 to 2 brushes. I try to work with as big a brush as I possibly can manage, which is easy when I'm working pretty small. I use something pretty small. As I get bigger and more confident in my pieces, I'll probably use larger brushes. Pigments that I would say I use most often, you don't need to get a huge set with a ton of colors. I actually think that it's a pretty good educational tool to start with very few pigments and try your best to learn how to mix colors. So I have ultramarine blue, I have a big tube of titanium white, I use Payne's gray, never use black. Black will kind of suck the life out of your painting or make it look a little mismatched. So I use a gray, and then I try to mix my own grays wherever I can. I have a light yellow, which you can see it's all coming off here. These last me a while. So what I try to do is actually spend the most money on my pigments. As you get started, I would say go for a medium range paint, because the cheaper the paint, it's actually going to be frustrating and kind of hard to work with as you're getting to know the medium. I am no expert by any means, and I only work in acrylics. So when it comes to oils or watercolor, gouache, all kinds of mediums out there. For acrylics, I highly recommend going for mid-range. Don't go for craft acrylics. You'll be pulling your hair out trying to figure out how to use them. So I find that Golden, Liquitex, even Michael's brand is perfectly fine. I always have it at the very least the primary colors. So I always have a good solid red. I prefer ultramarine blue, but a phthalo blue can be really fun, and a white and a yellow. So from there, you can mix almost everything that you need. It can be really helpful to, maintain a brown on hand. I have a raw sienna here. So I have a little raw sienna. And then the only other color, oh, God, I love Hooker's Green. Hooker's Green is just my number one probably, but you get really good greens just using those primaries. So don't be afraid to start small. I would say my number one philosophy is trying really hard to not go crazy spending on new art supplies. I have always been a crafter. I've always been into art, and it's really fun to buy new things at the store. If you don't use it, you're just wasting your money. The other thing that we need to talk about are surfaces that you can paint on and what you should be putting your paints on to mix. This is probably the world's most basic. This is a canvas panel. This one's 10 by 10. I recommend getting some rectangular, some square. I like to start small. Oftentimes I get really intimidated by a larger canvas, so starting small and starting on something that isn't precious, like a cheaper, lower end like canvas panel, can be a great way to push yourself into actually putting brush onto canvas. I do a fair bit of canvas preparation, but when you're just getting started, don't even think about it, don't worry about it. The canvas will have a texture to it, which can be frustrating for new painters. I would say just use more paint. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of water. Just start here, start simple. When it comes to mixing your colors and what to put your paint on when you're painting, I really like these canvas boards. I'll get a pack of them and I'll use the back when it's covered in plastic. You'll see it's kind of like glaring in the sun there. When it's covered in plastic, I'm gonna be honest with you, I just put the paint right on here and I mix right on here until I'm ready to use it. And then obviously I'll move on to a different one. If you don't have more than one of these, there's a million different options for palettes. You can use a plate, you can use an old plate, don't go crazy. You can get these packs of palette paper. I think this was $12 for a pack. It lasts a really long time and you actually don't need to tear it out. They're usually bound on two edges, so you can just use it right here as a palette. As you get into this process of making more art, there's obviously a lot more optionality, but the purposes of this little tutorial, I guess, is to get you started. So when you're going to the store and you have no idea what to get, I would get 1-2 brushes and, you know, this kind of size. I think it's like 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, or an inch. Get a few pigments, mid-range pigments, and get a surface or two, and then just go from there. You really, for water, I use this gherkin jar or pickle jar is the best because it has a nice wide mouth here. Recycle where you can, you know, recycling is cheap, so it gets you started. When you're just starting out, you'll kind of struggle with some paint texture, so a little spray bottle can be helpful. I got this at Michael's for like, I think $1.75, something like that. And you can just periodically spray down your paint. So yeah, anyways, I hope that you found this helpful. If you are interested in, you know, me answering some of your questions, if you are an artist and you have tips, please pop them below. I'd love to hear everyone's take. And yeah, come back next time for more.